You've made it. After following the previous episodes, it's time to take your server to the next level and deploy it to a production-ready environment. I'll explain what to consider when choosing a hosting provider to maximize your L2 server's performance. Let's dive right in. No matter which provider you choose, we'll follow the same principles. You'll deploy your login and game servers on a dedicated virtual private server and publicly expose their ports. The server will communicate with the database using its internal IP address over port 3306. Finally, you should expose port 22 for SSH, but restrict access to your private IP address only. When selecting your machine configuration, it's important to strike the right balance between CPU and RAM. If you're curious, pause the video here and take a closer look at how the resources are impacted. For this video, I'll be using Google Cloud, one of the leading cloud providers on the market. Search for Compute Engine and click Create Instance. We'll begin configuring our login and game server VM. I'll show you the minimum configuration you should select for a small server to ensure a smooth experience. Choose your desired region and uncheck snapshot schedules and monitoring to avoid unnecessary costs. On the network tags, let's create our custom tag and we'll use it later on. Our instance is now up and running. To connect to it and upload our files, we'll use a tool called WinSCP. Search for it online, download it, and complete the installation. Open WinSCP. To get started, we need to generate the SSH key that we'll use to authenticate with our server. Go to Tools and select Run PuttyGen. Click Generate, then move your mouse around the blank area until the process completes. Save the private key file somewhere on your disk. Then copy the server's external IP address and enter it in the host name field. Go to Advanced, then Authentication, and select the private key file you just saved. Now click Display Public Key and copy the value. We'll add this key to our VM instance. When adding the key, you must also add your desired username at the end by leaving a space after the key. Now it's time to modify the firewall and add 3 rules: one for login server port, one for game server port, and one for SSH connection. Let's start with login server. We'll allow ingress requests on port 2106 for our custom network tag. For source IP, range use 0.0.0.0/0 for public binding. Now repeat the process for game server and use port 7777. Now for SSH, we need to do the same thing for port 22. The only difference is that now on the source IP address range, you'll use your actual public IP address. Feel free to use websites like whatismyapp.com to grab it easily. So you'll enter your public IP/32. This way we restrict any SSH connection to the cluster if it comes from outside our home network. Next, we'll connect to the server via SSH, using the console so we can create a user, set up a dedicated directory, and attach the SSH key. The username must match the value you previously provided when adding the public key. Here you need to grab and paste the public key. To exit the editor, press Ctrl plus X on your keyboard, then press Y to save. Now it's time to grant read and write permissions to our new user and create the L2J directory that we'll use for the server. I am now switching to our dedicated user. We are going to run a few commands in order to install Java 25 on the machine. I'll leave these in the video description so you can grab them easily. Excellent! Now that we are done with Java, we'll connect to the machine and transfer over the server files. Make a zip archive of your server and upload it. This is the fastest way to move all the files. We will then install a utility that allows us to unzip the archive. We're almost done with the server VM. Next, we'll provision a dedicated MySQL instance and migrate the database. Running your database on the same VM as your game server creates unnecessary resource contention and performance bottlenecks. Go to the search bar, type Cloud SQL, and choose MySQL. Give it a name and a password. Select the same region you've used for your server VM to minimize latency. It's best to create a dedicated non-root user for your database. You can initially leave the Allow Any Host option enabled, since you'll be connecting from your home network to migrate the database. Later, you can update this setting and restrict access to connections originating only from within your cluster network for improved security. Create the database schema and give it the same name you have on your local database. Head over to Connections, Networking, and enable the Private IP option. This will assign a private IP address to your database instance. We'll later use it to configure the login and game servers to connect to the database. Open your MySQL client and connect to your local database. We'll export all the tables into a single SQL dump file. Now let's connect to the remote database and import the SQL dump file. Copy the database's public IP address and use the database user and password you recently created to connect. Excellent. Now that the database is up and running, it's time for the final step: updating the connection settings in our server configuration files. Copy the private IP address, then open the game and login configuration files and update the database host value. While you're in the game server configuration file, don't forget to update the public and internal host settings with the public and private IP addresses of your cloud server. Time for the final step, starting the login and game servers. To run both jar files in the terminal, we'll install Screen, a utility that allows you to run multiple processes in separate terminal sessions. First, let's start the login server. Follow the commands and run the jar file. Once it's running, press Ctrl+A, then D to detach from the session. This will return you to the main terminal window. Then repeat the same process for the game server. To check both contexts, you can use the screen-ls command. Verify that both processes are running correctly by navigating to the login/log folder and checking the output log file. Repeat the same process for the game server. You're all set. Add the VM's public IP to your L2 file, connect to the server, and enjoy a stable, production-ready environment with your players. In the next episode, we'll cover best practices for securing your game server, along with practical tips and tricks for choosing the right hosting provider. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.